When my aunt died, she left me everything, or at least that's what I thought. Then her caretaker smiled and said there had been a change. I can still remember that day. The air inside the house felt heavier than grief. My aunt Clara Whitlow had passed 3 days earlier, and her Victorian home in Vermont still smelled faintly of her lavender perfume and old books. The caretaker, Miriam Hale, stood in the parlor with the composure of someone who'd rehearsed every word. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Laurel," she said, her voice soft and practiced. "But before the funeral, there's something we should discuss." Miriam was the kind of woman people trusted immediately. Early 50s, delicate posture, perfectly parted silver hair. My aunt had hired her 2 years ago when arthritis made it hard to live alone. She'd become like family, or so I believed. She handed me an envelope embossed with a law firm's seal. "Your aunt wanted you to have this." I slid my finger under the flap, expecting closure, the will we'd discussed countless times. Aunt Clara had no children, and she'd said more than once, "It'll all be yours someday, Laurel. You understand this place better than anyone." But when I unfolded the document, my throat went dry. The date on top read April 17, only 2 weeks before Clara died. And under beneficiary, my name was gone. In its place, Miriam Hale. For a moment, the room tilted. I felt absurdly dizzy, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. "Miriam," I said slowly, "this can't be right." She pressed a hand to her chest, feigning surprise. "I was as shocked as you. But your aunt said she wanted to make things easier. She didn't want you burdened with the upkeep." Burdened? That word snapped something inside me. My aunt had loved this estate. The rose garden she'd tended for 30 years, the library she called her sanctuary, even the crooked staircase she refused to fix because imperfection keeps a house humble. Clara would never call this place a burden. Still, I nodded, too stunned to argue. "I'd like to speak to her attorney," I said. Miriam smiled, almost sadly. "Of course, but Mr. Lowell's office is closed until Monday." That was Friday. She knew exactly what she was doing. The funeral came and went in a blur of condolences and damp tissues. Miriam stood beside me, hand resting gently on my shoulder, whispering things like, "Your aunt adored you, and she'd want peace between us." Every word felt like a blade wrapped in silk. By Monday, I was done playing polite. I drove straight to Lowell and Ames, the small-town firm that had handled my aunt's affairs for decades. Mr. Lowell, a balding man with glasses too large for his face, looked startled when I mentioned the new will. "April 17?" he repeated. "That's odd. I drafted Mrs. Whitlow's will myself last year. There was no mention of a revision." He dug through his files, muttering under his breath, until he found it, the original, properly signed and notarized. My name sat clearly at the top, listed as sole heir. "Then how?" I started. He frowned. "Miriam must have brought that new document in after hours. The signature looks convincing, but something feels off." He offered to file a formal challenge, but I stopped him. "Not yet," I said. "I want to understand what she did first." Because deep down, I already knew this wasn't just greed, it was control. Miriam had always hovered too close to my aunt, finishing her sentences, screening her calls, subtly deciding who got access to her. I'd ignored it, thinking she was just overprotective. But overprotection has a pattern. It isolates, then replaces. Over the next week, I stayed at the house. Miriam insisted it was to help me transition. She moved through the rooms like a queen surveying her inheritance, rearranging Clara's things, giving orders to the staff that used to answer to me. The first time I saw her sitting in my aunt's reading chair, sipping from her teacup, I felt something cold settle in my chest. That night, when she went to bed, I started digging, literally and digitally. Clara had been old-fashioned, but she'd learned to email, so I accessed her account using the password she'd given me years ago, her cat's name, Juniper. Inside, I found dozens of messages from Miriam, but one caught my eye. It was dated April 15, 2 days before the supposed new will. Subject line, urgent draft. Please review before printing. Attachment, will_update.doc. My pulse quickened. The message was from Miriam's personal email to herself. I downloaded the file and opened it. It was exactly the new will she'd presented. Same wording, same formatting, same false date. But the real clue wasn't in the text. It was in the metadata. The document's creation date was April 19, 2 days after my aunt died. I stared at the screen until my hands started trembling. That was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was strategizing. The next morning, I printed everything. The email headers, the file history, even screenshots showing the digital timestamps. I needed verification, so I took them to a friend from college, Devin Marks, now a cybersecurity consultant in Boston. He examined the files carefully. She used Word's built-in editor. Amateur mistake, he said. See this? The system metadata's embedded in the XML. She tried to backdate it, but the save logs don't lie. So it's fake? Beyond fake, he said. This isn't just fraud, it's criminal fabrication. I exhaled, the first real breath I'd taken in days. Can you get me a verified report? Devin nodded. I'll have it notarized by morning. When I drove back to the estate that night, the house felt different. Still grand, still heavy with history, but the fear was gone. I wasn't trapped anymore. I was watching. Miriam met me at the door, wearing one of Clara's shawls. Long day? She asked sweetly. I smiled. Productive. For the next week, I played along. I let her think she'd won. We shared breakfasts, sorted through my aunt's belongings, even planned a memorial garden. Every moment was a study in performance. She'd talk about her plans. Maybe I'll restore the guest house. And I'd nod, pretending to care. She thought my silence was submission. In truth, it was precision. By Friday, I had everything I needed. Devin's report, Mr. Lowell's statement verifying the original will, and a court date. Miriam still had no idea. When the summons arrived 2 days later, she nearly dropped her tea. You're contesting it? She gasped. I'm defending it, I said. Yours is the fake. She laughed, actually laughed. Oh, Laurel, you're young. You don't understand how these things work. The document is notarized, signed, and filed. You can't prove intent. I just smiled. We'll see. The hearing was scheduled for early June. The courthouse was small, the kind with echoing hallways and a single flag that leaned slightly to the left. Mr. Lowell represented me. Miriam had hired an attorney from the city, Richard Voss, sleek and predatory in an expensive gray suit. When I entered the courtroom, Miriam gave me a tight, pitying smile. Still time to withdraw, dear, she whispered. Still time to confess, I replied. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called us to order. The session began with formalities, verification of documents, witness statements, procedural questions. Voss moved confidently, citing the notarization and presenting the updated will as evidence. I watched him perform, calm and detached, while he emphasized phrases like authentic revision and the decedent's final wishes. Then it was our turn. Mr. Lowell spoke briefly, then nodded to me. Miss Whitlow has prepared a demonstration. I stood, heart steady, and connected my laptop to the courtroom monitor. This, I began, is the digital file presented as the new will. According to its metadata, it was created at 11:42 a.m. on April 19th. My aunt passed away on April 17th. The judge leaned forward. You can verify this? Yes, Your Honor. This report was generated by a certified cybersecurity analyst. I handed over the notarized report. It includes the file's creation, modification, and save history. The timestamps are system embedded, impossible to falsify without leaving a trace. Voss shifted in his seat. Your Honor, anyone can manipulate digital files. I interrupted, my tone even, which is exactly what Miss Hale did. But she didn't realize Microsoft Word automatically stores full edit logs, including device usernames. The file lists its creator as Miriam Hale, not my aunt. The judge glanced at the screen, then at Miriam. Is this accurate? For the first time, Miriam's composure faltered. "It must be an error," she stammered. "Clara, she dictated—" But before she could finish, her own attorney stood. "Your Honor," Voss said, voice suddenly cautious, "in light of this evidence, I need to withdraw from representation." A hush fell over the room. Miriam turned toward him, bewildered. "What are you doing?" "I don't represent forgeries," he said flatly. The judge's gavel came down once. Case dismissed. The court recognizes the original will, naming Miss Laurel Whitlow as sole heir. Miss Hale, you are advised that criminal charges may follow pending investigation. Miriam's face went pale. I gathered my documents quietly, every movement deliberate. As I turned to leave, she reached for my arm. "You don't understand," she hissed. "She wanted me to have it too." I looked her straight in the eyes. "If that were true, you wouldn't have needed to fake it." The media coverage came days later. Caretaker caught fabricating will. Digital trail exposes estate fraud. I didn't seek the attention, but it found me anyway. I stayed silent through it all, declining interviews, letting the facts speak. Because this was never about revenge headlines. It was about truth. Quiet, undeniable truth. When the dust settled, I returned to the estate. The roses were blooming again, soft petals brushing against the iron fence my aunt once painted herself. Inside, the house finally felt like it belonged to someone who loved it. I walked into the library, her favorite room. The sunlight caught the edges of her reading chair, the same one Miriam used to occupy like a throne. I sat down slowly, running my fingers along the armrest worn smooth by decades of use. There, in the quiet, I could almost hear her voice. "Don't let anyone rewrite what's yours, Laurel." I smiled. I didn't. In the months that followed, I turned the estate into something living again. The garden became a community space. The library opened for local students. I even kept Miriam's old room untouched, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of what deception looks like when it smiles politely. Sometimes I think about her face in court, the flicker of disbelief when her own lawyer abandoned her. It wasn't triumph I felt then, it was closure. Because she'd built her power on the illusion that I was naive, emotional, easily outmaneuvered. But what she never understood was that quiet doesn't mean weak, it means watching. And watching gave me everything I needed. Now, when people ask how I managed to prove it, I tell them the truth. She underestimated technology. But the real answer runs deeper. She underestimated me. Because manipulation only works if you doubt your own perception. Once you stop doubting, the whole game collapses. I learned that truth isn't loud, it's precise. It doesn't shout or accuse, it just reveals. And in that revelation, justice doesn't need vengeance. It just needs proof. So I live here now, in the house my aunt built, surrounded by her books and her roses. The air smells like lavender again, like it did before Miriam's lies. At night, I light a single candle by the window. The flame flickers against the glass, small but steady, like something that refuses to be rewritten. And every time I see it, I whisper the same quiet truth. Some inheritances are money, others are clarity. I got both.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.